super excited to have you guys here. As you guys know, I'm the Lumberjack Landlord, and I always try and bring fantastic guests to you that are the people that I rely on to run my ever growing business. But if you could, Kevin, introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of get into it, because I know that I have a ton of people that are like, I can't wait till you have this plumber session. So there's going to be a lot here, my friend. So talk to everybody about who you are and kind of background, and take me through it.
Yes, Kevin Coppinger. I'm with Kachika Plumbing and Heating. I've been doing the plumbing racket for about 33 years, 32, 33 years. I went into business probably about 10 years after that. Full-time opened to my new business, my own business, Kachika Plumbing and Heating, and here in Dover. It's not exactly what I planned. Actually, it is not what I planned on doing. I was going to be a high school biology or a high school history teacher. I was not going to be into plumbing. Had no idea, but an opportunity just presented itself, fell into my lap, and after realizing the teaching thing was not going to happen, I said, well, let's run with it. So I've been running ever since.
I can definitely see the teacher thing. I mean, for the number of slaps I've gotten in the head, or the hey, pay attention, I can definitely I can definitely see that. So we've worked together for we're coming up on 20 years. You and I are. 2005 was when I met you.
That's crazy.
2005. So we're 17 years in. So wow. Super excited to have you here. We have done every kind of project together. You name it, we've done it. And so I think the things that I think most often, kind of obviously there's all the different fuel types and all the different system types, and there's just so much to cover. We'll never cover all of it here, but I think one of the things that we always try and prepare people for, obviously as the Lumberjack Landlord, obviously as a self-manager, I try and handle the first 20 feet. And then after it gets hard, then you come in. And so kind of what are some of those things that, you look at that you're just like, oh, if you just did these three things, life would be so much better for you as the customer. So if you had to kind of, and yeah, I'm totally springing this on you, all these questions he has not had beforehand. So it's really, truly, I wanted to kind of get his off the cuff, man, these are the things I see consistently that are just like constant mistakes that people make, that if you just did these things, you'd lower your costs, you'd increase your reliability. Walk me through just kind of the top 2 or 3 in your minds you kind of see consistently. I know you don't see them in my property after I buy them. It's always before.
Oh yeah.
It's not
just you. Trust me, it's not just you. Now, some of the biggest thing, I guess, it probably is just neglect. People, if you just called me, 6 months earlier, before the leak got to this particular point, you wouldn't have had the damage. You wouldn't end up having, if you have a leak on a boiler, depending on the type of boiler, if you catch it early on, no problem. If you don't catch it early on, you're going to end up having problems. Now you're going to see corrosion. Now you're not going to be able to get something apart. That goes for, I don't care if that's a toilet. I don't care if that's a shower valve, a kitchen sink, a boiler, a water heater. Doesn't matter. If you can try and catch issues before they end up being really big issues, then most of your problems are going to be much easier and much less to deal with.
Yeah. We always talk to our tenants really about 3 things. And Dion from Financial Talk, Dion Talk Financial Freedom. One of the things we always talk about is there's really 3 reasons to call your landlord: fire, flood, or blood. All of those things are not text messages. None of those are emails. Fire, flood, blood, pick up the phone. So thankfully you're there sometimes for fire. But usually, thankfully, we don't have very many fires. We had that one with the boiler that we just took out. But fire, flood, or blood. So thankfully, blood is usually only you catching a saw in a hole and having it whip back and catch you. That's
Yeah.
usually the only blood part. Or it's
Yeah,
usually the fingers a lot. But talk to me a little bit about, really kind of the flood part, because we've seen it. We've seen flood. So
oh yeah.
what you just walked people through was, hey, if you see something, even just like a little simple, or like the toilet's a little wonky on its axis, and just simple things, like if you see that you've got something that's not quite right, it's much less expensive to handle it up front. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't know is, and this is for people kind of north part of the US, not so much the southern part of the US, but with our heating systems, obviously we have a bunch of different fuel sources. So we have propane, we have oil, we have natural gas, from a hard pipe from the street. We've got all these things. Kind of talk to people a little bit about, there's so much confusion out there about, well, how often should I clean my system? And some people are like, well, every 2 years, every 3 years, once a year. Talk people through a little bit of the maintenance side on that when it comes to actual, maintenance on those types of heating systems.
Typically, oil is going to be more maintenance than gas, typically. But that doesn't mean that gas, and this is a big misnomer, is that people think that gas is maintenance free.
Right.
Nothing that's going to be burning any type of fuel is going to be maintenance free. You don't care if it's wood, oil, natural gas, propane, pellet stoves. No, it doesn't matter. You're still going to have somebody. If nothing else, have someone come in and take a, especially with gas, have somebody put eyes on it so they can see something that's not right, something sooting up or something like that. Definitely have someone come and take a look at it. That's whether it's a 95% efficient boiler or 75% efficient gas boiler. And oil, definitely you want to have someone, because oil can end up, you can get a bad tank of oil or something like that. Something starts sooting up. You should definitely having someone looking at that boiler, running a combustion test, not just and pulling the thing apart and doing a vacuum and brush and getting all the soot out of there and making sure that everything's running properly. You're going to be far ahead of it, because the last thing you want to do, and I've had it not happen to me because I don't do oil burner service, but you don't want to have one of those, an oil fired boiler puff back into your house. That'll make a god awful mess.
Let's talk about that.
It just ends up, it's soot everywhere.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that system that we just did, because we fell, I think, just short of that.
You actually went,
because we had carbon monoxide.
Puffback is messy.
Yeah.
Dry fire in a boiler, not having, boiler means you boiling water, having it run out of water, and this was a steam system. You went beyond just a puffback. That boiler could have gone really bad, and the thing could have ended up catching on fire, literally. Some safety in there, thank goodness, ended up kicking off and saying that's not going to run. But I've run into systems that are dry fired, and even one of those things that somebody's like, oh, there's water in it. Worst thing you could do in a dry fired boiler, especially if it's hot, add water to it. That's an appetite for, you're going to find yourself, maybe 3 blocks away when that thing explodes.
Yeah.
So
talk about dry fire so people know what that is, because I know what it is.
A boiler has to have water in it for the weather. It's a steam boiler, which in most cases is probably 2/3 filled with water. It's not filled completely with water. Or hot water boiler, you actually have to have the system completely filled with water and under some type of pressure. Not a lot of pressure, 10 pounds, 15 pounds is nice. But if you don't have water in the system, then the system will dry fire, and you're going to have flame going directly on steel or cast iron, and it will start to melt. In this particular case, it'll crack. That's what happened over on that last job we just did. It cracked the boiler, and it won't hold water, and there's no fixing
that. Sadly, no. And the other thing too, folks, is that, as Kevin kind of takes people through this, one of the things to really be cognizant of is, in the world that we live in today with supply chain nightmares, it wasn't a call to the supply house, hey, can I get a steam boiler? It was a call to a bunch of supply houses, a bunch of companies, and it has to be, do you have it on the floor in front of you right now? Okay, what's the price? Sounds good, send it over, or we'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about supply chain now, because that's one of the things, obviously I'm talking to, our subscribers a lot, and
Yeah.
talk to me about that and what that's looking like for you to be able to do your job.
For the most part, it's been pretty good for the most part. I mean, overall, the last couple of years doing COVID, the whole COVID thing, for the most part, we were able to get stuff. There was a couple funky things that happened with, with plastics. So you had that freeze up that happened last February in Texas. Unfortunately, a lot of those companies that froze up wasn't just people's houses, which was bad enough. You get some manufacturers that are making resins. If they can't make the resins, and a lot of them are all petroleum derived, there's no way that you can make the plastic, whether it's PEX, PVC. That's part of the problem that you're having currently with getting windows, is because most of the vinyl windows are made out of PVC. If you can't get the resin, or a huge backlog on it, you're going to get, and it's a domino effect. It starts happening, it starts running down. I'm starting to have problems with PEX tubing all of a sudden in the last week. None of it. One of the biggest suppliers in New England is having problems keeping it on the shelves. Now, that's too, because there's so much building going on. That's part of the problem. The other thing is that for whatever reason, they're just not getting it out. They were having a problem with PEX getting PEX fittings. In fact, PVC fittings have been a real problem. Because a lot of manufacturers are actually putting big supply houses on allocation. It's like you're only going to get X amount, and then some of the sales companies are saying, yeah, we're going to only give you 50 PVC fittings of that particular type, and that's it. For a while. So they're trying to stop people from coming in and hoarding stuff, which we saw that with toilet paper and paper towels, obviously, at the beginning of COVID. But boilers was a real problem. One particular manufacturer, Well McLean, they were, start of the year, they were just saying, yeah, forget about it. January, yeah, we'll get you a boiler in April. That's a little bit of a problem when a boiler goes down, as we saw. I got the last gas-fired boiler that my supplier had, and they grabbed that out of a place in Rhode Island. And my salesman actually called up and said, "Do you have it on the? Like you said, do you have it? Yes. Tag it. Get it here."
Yep.
So, luckily that worked out. But I'll tell you, and it wasn't just one manufacturer. Like you said, it wasn't just one supplier, and multiple suppliers out of cast iron, not just steam boilers, but cast iron boilers. So,
yeah, I think that's something really important that people need to understand and hear is this is also why you want to have a relationship and almost a partnership with, with the guy that you're working with. Like Kevin, I mean, I greet him sometimes with wonderful sayings. There's all sorts of fun stuff that we get to do together. And it's because, yeah, we've been working together a long time, but it's honestly, it's one of the most important relationships that we have. We know that we can count on Kevin. Kevin knows that he can count on us. We are happy to send him business. And I don't think we really ever like some people are really proud of how often they grind their vendors. And that's just like, because you don't need the work. You have a long list of customers that are more than happy to pay. So the last thing you need is somebody calling you up and going, yeah, I get it, 17, but how about 14? How about I'm busy? How about 15? Still busy. 16, still busy. How about 17, like I originally quoted? All right, I can do it for that. And you're still 3 weeks out. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think one of the things that's really important, and one of the things that I talk to a lot of my subscribers about is you don't need to grind your vendor. Like if you're with the right vendor, you trust them, they're honest, they're taking care of you, they're doing the right thing. And more importantly, is you're forming a relationship where they can trust you and you can trust them. And so I think that mutually beneficial relationship. So that's how I view it. Now your turn to tell me how great I am.
Well, I would agree. It's a relationship. It's a give and take, and it's like
Sure.
Yep, I'm sure. There's times that I need you need something. Okay, we'll make it happen to try and get you in, because again, it's not. This is not just something that happened 2 weeks ago. This has been a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go back to the start of COVID. There was a couple weeks there right at the beginning. I was things were everyone was just kind of freaking out. Started COVID. No one knew what was going on. I didn't know what to expect. And I mean, things got a little slow there, but I remember one time we ended up having a job. It's like, listen, can you come and do a boiler for me? I'm like, things were kind of slow. and I say slow, I was only working maybe 30 hours a week as opposed to 50 hours a week. But still, it was, one of those things. And you came through. It's like, yeah, I need this done. Just go. We go into a basement, didn't see anyone, got it taken care of because everyone was kind of, like I said, freaking out. So again, it's a two-way street. You help me, I help you. It works out well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's awesome. I mean, I love that, right now it's in the position where I'm the beggar, you're the beggee. I have to get the time, right? Because you're so busy. And we
Yeah.
know because we've been through this over the last 30 years, or the last 20 years, we know it's going to flop and flip flop, or you have some extra time. And that's when it's going to be like, it's as simple as, because I appreciate Kevin because he's a part of the team. He says, hey, I've got some openings over here. It's not begging for it. He's just saying, I've got some openings. And so I'll say, cool, let me plug a couple things into those openings. And that's really the key for us. So I think that's cool. I wanted to talk about our relationship a little bit without the counselor. And what I wanted to kind of talk about next was, so your focus really is gas. So natural gas, propane gas, that's really your focus. You've done a ton of work on what's called one pipe steam boilers. One of the few guys around here who actually knows how those work. I actually know better how some of those work than some of the techs that I've seen in the field, which is a little bit scary. But one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about was just kind of, as people are evaluating, just because something's 30 years old doesn't mean it's almost dead.
No.
Just because something's 10 years old doesn't mean it's not almost dead.
No.
And it really, a lot of times, comes down to the install, right? How well it was installed, and then how well it was maintained after the install.
Oh, I'm going to say that's probably 90% of the problem. You can have the best product in the world that's not installed right. It's not going to matter what, it won't work right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people don't look at owner's manuals and installation manuals nearly as often as they should. Right. In relation to the steam thing, I mean, there's plenty of information. And there's one author who I've actually read quite a bit of his stuff. Related to steam, Dan Holohan. He actually has a book which we kind of refer to the steam as a kind of the Bible. It's called The Lost Art of Steam Heating. And there's just tons of information out there. And there's plenty of places that you can get the information out there if you want to. And the manufacturers, again, for their installation manuals for steam, I mean, they want you to install it right. They want everything to go right. So they really want their product to work for you. So and you're right. I mean, there's plenty of those steam heating systems out there that, I mean, they have, other than a burner, really no moving parts. So they do really well. Now, does some of the piping rot out sometimes? Yep, that happens all the time, especially on returns. And you cut out the leak, and then you put in the repair piece of pipe, and then you're good for another 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. So there's just because, I mean, a lot of people poo-poo steam because they say it doesn't work right, but if it was installed right and maintained right, it should work perfectly fine.
It works awesome. I mean, we've got 115 units, and we've got steam and still in probably, I don't know, at least 15 or 20. We still have steam. Yeah. So we still have a decent amount of steam. So we'll play the lumberjack landlord version of the vendor newlywed game.
Oh boy.
See how well I know you, see how well we know each other from a plumbing perspective. So if you were to be told, hey, listen, we've got natural gas at the street. I want you to tell me what boiler you're putting in, or what system you're putting in place, and why you're putting that system in place. What would the answer to that question be?
You're gonna have to give me more. I mean,
so if you for
brand new house, existing house, I mean,
so what we do, right? So what we do, existing house, not a new build, but an existing house, you've got natural gas at the street, and you look at it and you say, you know what, here's the type of system setup that I would put in. And don't get crazy, I'm not a plumber. People watching aren't plumbers or heating companies. So it really just comes down kind of simply. It's like, I would do this system because it's this type of heat, and that's a nice even heat.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
what would that be?
Yeah. Okay. I would do a hot water system. I mean,
Yep.
steam's nice, but I mean, if this is a new system, I would do a natural gas fired boiler, condensing boiler. So that's going to put you well over 90% efficiency if you design it right. Ideally, I mean, either panel radiators or cast iron radiators would be my favorite, because it's a nice, slow, even heat.
This is where he's geeking out a little bit. He wants he wants a hot chocolate by the fire while he talks about his steam radiators.
Geez, I could talk about this all day long. With so that would be my.
Do you have a particular brand? Do you have a particular brand in mind?
I'm a big, huge fan of IBC. I've got over, gee whiz, IBC, the boiler, natural gas. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, definitely an IBC boiler. I mean, I've got well over 100, probably 115 of these things installed. I've just had nothing but good luck with them. I know them inside and out, left ways, sideways. I've just, like I said, I've been to the factory over the Netherlands, and the way that they put everything together is great. I mean, it's just a great product, and I'm fully on board with it.
Yeah. So we've got, I think, Kevin, we've done 27 of them.
We've definitely done over 20. Yeah, we're definitely over 20. Yes.
So we've got 27 or 28 of them. And we had our very first part that we had to replace.
Yes, we did.
Talk to me about that, and because here's what I think people don't consider. Whatever system you installed, even when it's installed correctly, even when it's maintained correctly, it's going to break.
Sure. I mean, it's a moving part.
Right. So that's
one of the things
so the question is, right? So the real problem is that as a landlord, here's the thing that a lot of people don't consider. It's going to break while it's working, and while it's working, it's freezing outside usually. So what you need to be kind of getting in the mind's eye, and what I always tell people is, when that thing goes down, it's going to be cold. It's going to have been running consistently, and now something is broken. So you need two things. One, accessibility to parts, and two, accessibility to skill to get that part taken care of and swapped. So talk to me a little bit about why you like IBC.
Well, I have, one, the particular boiler, that the DCHC Superflow, is that they've got only 5 moving parts in it. So fewer moving parts means less chances for a moving part to break. I have a kit that they supplied to me because I've installed so many with all these parts in here, and then I can readily replace them, so that I've yet to have a case where I've actually gone to a job and I have to leave there saying, I can't get your heat going again. I've been able to go there with the parts kit, or send my employee out to replace the part and get that boiler back up and running in a matter of minutes from when I get there. One of the things I like about them is that the parts for 5 years when you buy that boiler are under warranty. So I mean, that's a really great, that's a real bonus thing, that they'll replace it under warranty within 5 years. You have to pay for the labor to get it, but put it in, but for the 5 years that they'll replace the part at no charge to you, which is pretty slick.
Yeah, I mean,
it's easy to work on. You don't have to end up getting your working hands in, have little tiny hands from some little 2-year-old to be able to fit inside there to grab onto the part. Everything's readily accessible from the front, in and out, done.
One of the things that I've really appreciated about that was, you and I have conversations often about technology, what's coming, what's working, what's not working. We don't like being bleeding edge, because quite frankly, we were kind of bleeding edge on combi boilers with the previous one that we picked, the Embassy Suites Onex boiler.
Yeah.
And that proved to be pretty painful. I mean, that was, I think we installed probably 4 of them, and maybe 2 of them are still in the field, and this is less than 10 years.
I think that's about right. And I know the property that's got 2 of them in it. Yeah.
I know a property, Kevin, that has 5 of them in it. They're all parts boxes.
the other end of the street. That's right. Oh, geez. Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're exactly right.
So when we see these things in the field and they fail, Kevin's just like, what do you want to do with that? And they're like, it doesn't work, right? And you're like, nope. So it's like, it's true. And so we literally just save the box and hope that if something fails in those other system, because I remember a couple of parts on one of those was like 13 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you can still get those parts. They're not as readily, but they're down on Long Island. Nobody around here stocks them anymore.
Yeah,
but I can get them in a few days out of Long Island. But
well, we had a couple.
Or I can go over to your basement of your place. And I can grab a part off of that too.
That's exactly. Well, here's the thing. Like we've got our own little, own Embassy Onex boneyard over there,
which is exactly right,
which was desired. But kind of back to the IBCs again, just from a customer perspective, I know that you can go over and you can fix it right away. So just answer your damn cell phone. I'm teasing. You always answer your phone. but so I know you can go over and fix it right away. I know you have the product there in the kit. And so I know, like, even that day when it happened this year, your guy was over there within like a couple of hours, and he had it swapped and back up and running within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about no heat for 4 hours, and we had to replace a major part on the system. Like probably the second most important part.
It was the fan had failed. Right? Yeah. But he went and he took care of it while I was lying in bed with COVID.
That's right. Yeah. That was, and for me, like I'm getting frantic tests from the tenant because it's 3 degrees outside.
Yeah.
So their house it's not keeping at 72 like everybody likes to keep their heat, or 86 or 84. At least my tenants where I pay for fuel. And so it was really unbelievably helpful, and everything came through. And we looked at it too, and I think that was one of the first I think we did, right? And that was like maybe 6.5 years old.
That's correct.
So 6.5 years old. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know what that repair was, maybe $800 to $1,000, somewhere around there.
I couldn't tell you.
But here's the thing, that type of a repair, 6.5 years after we bought the system and installed it, I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Something that's actually run every single day, because that was on a combi boiler. So every single time they turn on a faucet, that fan comes on. So how many times you turn on a faucet during a day?
Yeah. Yep. And like I said, I swear by these things. They're absolutely fantastic. And again, 6.5 years in, that's the only major part that we've ever had to replace.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a remarkable boiler. One of the things I get asked pretty often too is copper or PEX. And for me as a homeowner, especially buying the type of stuff that we have here in New England, there is like a less than 3% chance that what I'm buying has PEX in it. Like, or less than 2%. It's a very small number. I'm more likely to have polybutylene than
with your luck, huh?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, polybutylene is something that was like the precursor to PEX, except the problem is they had an issue with the joins, right?
Well,
was that
there was a couple? Yeah, I mean there was polybutylene got a bad rap down south because of using a nacelle type fitting with aluminum crimp rings. That's a no-go. Up here, for the most part, it was pretty good if they used copper fittings and copper crimp rings for the most part, unless they had a lot of chlorine in the water, and then that would do the tubing in. But I mean, and they had a big lawsuit over that, which that was a lot of people get a little, both your home inspectors, they get a little hinky about that. So
sadly, the class action where they still had a fund available closed 6 months before I bought a house that was full of it.
Yeah.
And so we actually redid that entire house in PEX. But so talk to me a little bit about, because again, when you're buying a home, I mean, when you're buying a rental property, more often than not, it's existing. It's not going to be a new construction. And so more often than not, you're going to have usually a ton of copper. Unless it's 2009 and every house is getting run into and copper was being stolen, which ironically, copper is more expensive now than it was then when houses were getting broken into and copper was getting ripped out.
Yeah.
It's more expensive now, and significantly more, because I think it was about a little over $4 then, and now it's about $5.40.
Yeah.
So it's much more expensive. So talk to me a little bit about PEX, why PEX, why copper, and because that's something that a lot of people ask.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, PEX for water piping is perfectly fine. PEX for most heat piping, perfectly fine. I mean, getting around a boiler, piping a boiler in PEX, I don't think I want to do that. But I mean, there's certain places where, obviously, I mean, if you get a freeze up, copper is easier to thaw out than PEX. Chances of getting it frozen up are less with PEX than with copper, because it's a conductor versus an insulate. You're going to typically have fewer joints, so less problems with PEX in terms of pressure drop through a system, as opposed to going through a lot of nooks and crannies with a lot of fittings. Any type of fitting sooner or later is going to leak. So fewer fittings, again, less parts, fewer fittings is better than more parts, more fittings. But I mean, they both have you can get a little bit more flow through a piece of 1/2-inch copper than a piece of 1/2-inch PEX, or a piece of 1-inch copper, 1-inch PEX. But they both have their place. And I mean, obviously everyone's kind of enamored with PEX just because it's a lot easier, faster to install than copper.
How much easier and faster do you feel it is to install?
Oh gosh.
Just a ballpark.
Well, I mean,
is it half as much time?
If you're soldering something, I mean, it's going to take probably 1/3 of the time to run waterline and PEX than waterline and copper. With the ProPass system, it makes obviously things a lot faster as far as making repairs and stuff on copper lines and installation of copper lines, a lot less. But and that's actually probably one reason why copper, in effect, has kind of made a comeback, because of the ProPress fittings that there are so prevalent now.
The ProPress is the most amazing, wonderful, fantastic tool. I love it so much. I keep ProPress fittings right here in my office on my desk. I got a nice 1-inch valve here too. So we love those.
It's definitely revolution. It definitely has been a revolution for me as far as productivity.
Sure.
Huge amount of productivity, being able to replace a boiler, make a repair. You don't have to get all the water out of it to solder something up, and that's huge. That is huge.
So another little game I want to play with you is name that pipe. I'm going to show you a pipe from one of the jobs that you recently did for me.
I know which one you're going to show me too.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't know. So I went through, I had like 10 of them, and this is just in like the last 60 days.
Oh,
so
boy.
we've had a little rash of old pipe.
Yeah.
But
you've got a lot of properties in the last 60 days, Matt.
it's been a fun winter, right, Kevin?
Yeah, it has been.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We thankfully we had 2 or 3 properties that were horrifically insulated.
Yeah.
And we literally put crews, 2-3 people in there doing nothing but insulating, just trying to get it so when it was below 0, we could get the unit above the basement at 68, 70 degrees. And so it was a lot of work. But so in the first slide of name that pipe, this is the first pipe. What type of pipe was that? And
that's galvanized steel pipe, which was used back in the 40s and 50s for drain line piping. Prevalent. That was pretty much the predominant thing, because copper wasn't a thing yet.
Yep. And here's when you know it's been done right, when you're just working on the difference between the future and the past.
Oh yeah.
When you section that Galvy pipe and you put it right into a nice PVC coupling, that's never going to leak.
I mean, that was some custom work right there, folks. That was serious custom work.
Oh my word. So I know that we do this a lot. And so I was ashamed the first time you called me and told me, man, I don't think I've ever seen anything this bad. And now I don't wear it as a badge of honor, because I feel like I'm trying, and I'm trying to stretch your horizons. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that you have your famous book of photos. And sadly, I am rather prevalent in that book of famous photos.
You could have few.
So talk to me about kind of the worst, our worst. Like, what's the worst that you showed up and you were like, because so Kevin, if you couldn't tell, is kind of stone faced, and so it's kind of hard. And he also, like, largely is just like, he's just like really even keel. And for me, so I'm like, so how bad is it? And he's like, oh, it's pretty bad. And, we can do this and that. And I'm like, oh, tell me how really bad it is. What was the worst? What was the one where you're just like, holy cow?
Boy, I'm gonna have to really think about that.
Because was it the one at because I think if I had to guess, I would guess it was the Atlas system.
Oh, that one. I mean, as far as a boiler, that was a pretty bad boiler. I mean, as far as that was old. But then the one in the planet next door wasn't much better.
Right.
They kept that one put together with duct tape and baling wire. I don't even know how that thing even worked. That was pretty bad.
That thing was like 1948, wasn't it? 1948, 1950. It was like right in that.
Very well be the one in the unit up the hill. That was late 60s, early 70s, but
Yeah,
it
no,
had not been kept up, and it was a damp basement. I mean, there's just, one thing after another was bad with that. And they, like I said, literally tried to keeping that together with baling wire and bubble gum.
You're in trouble when Kevin walks in and he goes, "Holy cow! I think that thing was on the Mayflower."
Yeah.
So speaking of that one, I don't remember what that system was, but here was the gauge off of that system. This is when your plumber's also your buddy. So yeah. I said, dude, we got to keep that gauge. That gauge is just super cool. And in all the years I've been doing landlording, I've never seen anything like it. So he was really nice and, put it on the mount and all that cool stuff. But this gauge was actually on a working boiler in one of the houses that I bought, that we actually within like 90 days replaced the system, because I was like, the guy was complaining nonstop. He's like, the heat's so expensive here. And I go, all right, we'll come take a look at it. So I meet up with Kevin, we go in, we take a look at it. And the first thing he says is, I think that thing was on the Mayflower. And I'm like, that's awesome.
I'll tell you, it was not easy putting in the back of the scrap guy's truck. That was a heavy boiler.
Yeah.
That was a super heavy boiler. I think it took 4 of us. But yeah.
Do you remember what kind of boiler that was? I don't remember what kind it was.
Honest to God, I think it was so old that the name had actually worn off of it. It actually melted off of the thing. It was so old. The boiler burner, the tag on it, the boiler plate, it was missing. So I have no idea.
Yeah, it's so kind of coming a little bit back to the maintenance piece. So obviously, oil, dirtier than gas. So usually it's like an annual clean, and usually with gas, it can be an every other year type of clean. I think that, do you get the question very often of, hey, I have the chance of going, do you have a preference in fuel type? Like, I know that you're a gas and propane guy. Yeah. I know that, but do you look at it and go, hey, here's the reason why gas and propane and not oil, as an example?
Yeah, I mean, depending how, I'm definitely a natural gas, because you can get natural gas is cheaper than propane typically. Oil, quite frankly, is cheaper than propane, unless there's a particular type of, if the house is really tight and you can design the system to run at lower water temperatures. I would probably say, sure, propane would be a good idea. Or you've got a problem with the chimney, because you can power vent oil, but I really don't recommend it, because just like you said, that power vent will end up belching a bunch of black stuff all over the side of your house because it's not working quite well, or it will fail. And of course, not in the middle of July. It will fail probably in the middle of January on a Sunday or a Saturday night where no one really wants to go out and take care of it. chimneys are really best designed to be into an oil system. So if you've got a problem with the chimney though that's unlined or falling apart, then it might be considered to be able to go to propane over that, because the upfront cost on an oil over an oil fired versus a propane over oil with a lined chimney are going to probably come into line. So, but well, of course, up until recently, of course, we're looking at $5 a gallon for heating oil. I don't know what the cost of propane is. I haven't looked at it, but
It's about the same.
yeah. You should get more bang for your buck out of a gallon of propane, a gallon of oil versus propane. So even if you figure the efficiency in, I mean, a good quality oil fired system is still a good thing if you don't have access to natural gas.
Yep. So you would say IBC, obviously, right, is only going to run on natural or propane.
Correct.
So are you better off? I'm asking this question for Crimson Knight 921. See, I told you I'd ask the question. Are you better off with a IBC on propane versus an oil on, or some system with oil if you're a forced hot water system?
If ballpark, I'm going to still probably say if the chimney's good and the system is in good shape, yeah, I'm probably going to probably encourage you. And the oil tank's in good shape. I mean, all these other things, are saying they're good. I probably might actually say go with the oil versus the propane if the system is in all the other components, chimney, oil tank, are in good shape. I would probably encourage you to go that way versus going to a propane system, just because of the cost per gallon for fuel.
Yep. Yeah. And there's a lot of variables. And that's the thing. That's why Kevin was squirrely answering the question, is because there's so many variables.
Yeah.
You just don't know. And it can come down to insulation. I mean, honest to God, I probably for the first 6 months, Kevin would talk to me about envelopes. I thought he was just really passionate about mail. and he wasn't. He was talking about, no, the building envelope. And I was like, yeah. Now I get it. I got you. Yeah. But yeah, I thought he was just really passionate about the U.S. Postal Service and letters. And I was just like, Kevin, I'm not getting mail from you. I don't know what you're talking about. These envelopes you keep on mentioning, I don't know what they are. Are there invoices in there? What's in those envelopes?
Yeah.
So that was one of those things. What, as people, aside from kind of the maintenance side and getting things cleaned and things like that, what are some of the things that as landlords we can do to, I guess, eliminate that oh no moment? Like, one of the things that we do, as you know, is we try to eliminate some of the garbage shutoffs, like those star valve things, or the ones like so often in the basements of the houses that we buy. Like, we've replaced a bunch of them, but those old star valves with like the quarter turn, ball valve. So what are some of the kind of like little things like that you're like, hey, listen, it might be a few hours of a plumber kind of doing those things, but it really sets you up? Because how many times have we had like the bottom of the junk cabinets that get put in, not ours, but the previous ones, they put some cabinet in there and the thing is so wet and so destroyed because it was a little drip here or lack of putty there in the sink drain. What are some of those things that you're seeing that you're saying, hey, if you're a landlord, if you're buying a property, just take a look at these couple things, because they probably will save you some time and money?
I mean, like you say, sink drains, make sure, get a good quality, stuff that goes in underneath the sink, the basket strainers, the piping underneath it. Make sure that's, it's secure, it's tight. It's like you said, how many times you could see underneath the kitchen sinks or a bathroom sink, and it's just, and of course, most of the kitchen sink not the kitchen sink cabinets, they're made out of what? Particle board. Right. You get particle board wet, it turns to oatmeal in a pretty much short period of time. So, I mean, those are the oh no moments. Just open up a kitchen cabinet and like, oh no. I mean, literally, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that, just because someone didn't pay attention, or they used an really inferior quality basket strainer or the piping underneath, or it wasn't put together properly. those are definitely stuff that I see that probably in a simple everyday in, day out basis. Stuff like that. Um,
What would you say about, so one of the things that I thought was funny, and I don't think you were making fun of me. You could have been, which is fine. But we had something where we had a blown water line, supply line. And for those of you who don't know, supply line is the one that supplies whatever the appliance is or whatever it is with water. So there's water, active water in there. So if you have a crack, a split, a pop, or whatever, that thing is flowing. And flowing at the tune of gallons a minute. So my question, so we had one where that happened, and then I went down to shut, oh, so I tried in the sink to shut off to use the shut off, and it was rusted and I couldn't get it to move. And then I ran downstairs. I think this was at one of the Central Ave properties, the gray one. Run downstairs in the basement, try and shut it off there. That basement's damp. That thing's not moving. So we literally had to shut off the water to the entire building because one sink had a leak, and the two shutoffs that should have worked, the one from the basement up to the unit should have worked, didn't, frozen.
Yeah.
And not frozen cold, but frozen with rust and corrosion because no one probably had ever touched it. And then the same thing in the sink upstairs. The question is that, how, like during inspections now I'm kind of paranoid about that. So I actually try and squeeze them a little bit. And that's why I was like, hey, I just bought this house, Kevin. I need you to go swap out four of those. By the way, I have one of those for you to do tomorrow or Monday.
Okay.
But because literally they went to go do it, and it's like, squirting out water. And I was like, oh man.
At least you know where the shut off is. You'd be surprised how many homeowners don't know how to shut the water off to their house.
Know where the shut off is the first battle.
Yeah.
The second battle is have actually tested it before to know that it actually shuts off.
That's right.
Do you have a preference on those types of valves? Because I know for like during the 80s and 90s, really it was nonstop, those star-shaped ones.
Yeah, compression stop and waste. I mean, they're very common. Still see them all the time. Problem is that you turn them on and off, and then they leak a little bit, which is not a big deal. To tighten the packing nut up on it, but I mean, ball valves are pretty much the standard now. Of course, that was the other thing. The stop and waste were pretty inexpensive. And ball valves were expensive. Now it's kind of like you can get the other ones, but everything's so much gone to a quarter turn ball valve just because of the maintenance issues with the whole, lack of, having a problem. It's like it's on, it's off. Just that simple.
This is off. You'd be surprised how many people don't know.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
they're like, well,
it.
yeah, I shut it off. And you're like, no, I didn't. So this is off, down. This is on, in line with the pipe, and then this is what you see when it's open, and then this is what you see when it's closed. It's a silver ball. That's what it looks like. So these are huge. So what other things aside from, like I said, making sure your valves work, making sure you know where your valves are? We've talked about systems, we've talked about cleaning, we've talked about regular maintenance. If there was one other piece of advice you could give a landlord, whether they're doing it before inspection, because it's going to be a much bigger deal than they think it's going to be, or an owner, what would it be?
Well, this gets back to this past winter. It's one of those things that, I mean, probably one of the biggest things that landlords probably are always afraid of is frozen pipes. if you can, in the summertime, you knew there was a problem the past winter, probably address that air seal up as many areas, because it's not just insulation. In fact, you got to be careful putting the insulation on the wrong side of the pipe, because yes, I have seen it in new houses. And,
I was going to say, it wasn't my
problem. No, it wasn't one of your problems. This is a brand new house. The insulating contractor put the heat pipe right up against the outside wall with a piece of insulation, and then they had a frozen pipe.
Sure.
Stuff happens. I mean, just oversight. But I mean, that would probably be the biggest thing, is just insulate and air seal. Get out the great stuff, caulking, some fiberglass or some rock wool or something like that, and just seal up all the gaps. And that will save you a lot of headaches, because a frozen pipe is one thing, but if it stays frozen too long, it's a pretty good chance it's going to burst. And then now you're talking a real big problem. So
we had this one property this year. And it was a new property to me. I bought it in October. So, and there were people there. I bought it vacant, but there were people living there in the summertime and they had moved out. And we had 3 freeze ups there, and we did a lot of work every time in between, like heaters, heat tape, insulation. We went through 24 cans of great stuff in that part of the basement, plugging up mortar in areas and things like that, because there's these really old foundations. And Kevin discovered it, or his guy discovered it, and basically they found that for some reason in the kitchen on the wall that the cabinets are pushed back to, where then all the water piping feeds, for some reason those walls didn't have insulation in them.
None.
Like, and it makes no sense whatsoever that there's still houses today that even, like, everybody has heard of, popping a couple clapboards and getting hard pack in there, or getting now even like liquid foam, which is pretty awesome. But everybody's heard of this. And we did everything we could and we still couldn't avoid it. We had 3 freeze ups and it was like, it's frozen again. And it's like, did you even leave it on dripping? I shouldn't have to. Oh, well. So anyway, we got to actually fix those times, which is a lot of fun. So
that was the one where I ended up going down with Ashley, and I ended up running through the basement to shut the water off to the house through the basement. And then on the way back through the 3rd time, because the first time I didn't quite didn't find the leak and the split. And then on the 3rd time back through, I realized that I was just walking through a 3-inch puddle that had an electric space heater in the middle of it. Like, oh, that's pretty good. I didn't get electrocuted.
It's amazing how well they're insulated, Kevin.
Yes,
it's amazing. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time, hanging out with us. I know that our folks will find a ton of valuable stuff in this video. I know there's going to be a ton of questions. So if you have questions about this video and what's in this video, please make sure to reach out to me, or just post them here in the video. And then actually Kevin and I will get together and we'll do another video like this and we'll answer a bunch of those questions. That's number 1. Number 2 is, if you want to get in touch with Kevin, I'm not going to share all of his contact information in fear that you might blow up his phone with just questions and not actually any work. But here's what you guys need to do. Send me an email if it's something specific, like, hey, I'm looking at a boiler. Hey, I'm looking at this. He's here on the coast in New Hampshire. I know that he does amazing work. Like I said, I wouldn't have done 27 IBCs with him. And then we've done a bunch of others with him too, but now IBC is the dominant one. I think we've done so many IBCs. Holy cow. Love those things. We had one building set up where we put we had 4 in one building, but in that property, we had 6 in that. Yeah. Yep. So they're awesome. So Kevin, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. And as questions come in, I'll certainly let you know. And looking forward to doing this again with you. I appreciate you.
All right. Hey, Matt. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Have a good one.
You too.